Although I call you Doc, but that's obviously not your full middle name.
No.
Just for the guys watching, it's Phillip
Jourdan.
Jourdan.
Yeah.
Is that Jourdan related to wine somehow?
Oh, it is indeed,
Yeah.
yes. It is. I'm an ancestor, I think 8th or 9th, got the family tree.
Okay. Is that in the Franschhoek?
Yeah, that's Franschhoek. There's a monument there to the
Yeah, okay.
1688 settlers.
Oh, yeah, the Huguenot.
Yeah, Huguenot.
Are you descendant of Huguenot?
Yes, yeah. I've got the direct line.
Cheers, Doc.
Yeah. Good
Welcome
to
to
be here.
welcome to the Belfort. Okay, nice way to start. And then you find yourself in Cairo.
Yeah, landed. Cairo, very interesting place. It was a cosmopolitan city thriving with a big Greek and Cypriot population, and it was a busy place. It was straight after the war that I went there, 1945. And I was a little kid, so it was everything was cool because it was new. It was the school was in Heliopolis, which is now is another city, but it was just in the desert.
Okay.
And this is the time of King Farouk, and his face was everywhere. And then Nasser came around, and there were riots, and I was cut off from the school. We were cut off. We were isolated, and we were there for about 48 hours before they could get an armed convoy to come in and fetch us. And during the time that we were there, the main gates were closed, and they slaughtered a camel, cut its throat.
Camel? What did the camel do?
Cairo, we're in the desert, there are camels around, and so they opened the gate, and I saw the slaughtered camel outside. Anyway, my parents came with an armed convoy, and to fetch us a couple of days later, and that's why in the Shepherd's very famous hotel there was burning down, and I saw it burning down. At one trip, we were returning to Cairo, and it was a flying boat. It took 5 days. It landed at Lake Victoria, and then it was first somewhere on the Zambezi, and then second stop was Lake Victoria, and you overnight and so on. It's just got to land on a lake, and another experience I'll never forget is that there were gorillas just doing their own thing at the side of the road. Traveling on the Comet, it broke down in Khartoum, and it was a single-story shack that we had to spend the rest of the day while they were doing whatever they do to
Khartoum in Sudan.
Yeah, in the Sudan.
Sure.
And that's a memory I won't forget, because it was unbearably hot. There were absolutely no facilities. It was just a trying time.
Okay.
So I travelled on many aircraft. Nice thing about the flying boat was that it had a double deck, and you could go up for drinks on the top deck. So now I'm introduced to South Africa for the first time with a different set of rules and attitudes, and the first word I learnt in South Africa was yes or ja.
Ja.
I thought, wow, I'm learning the language.
So you embark on your academic career. I presume you went to university, or?
I started in the arts, and and it was a great life. The arts, it's very easygoing, and then after I was doing Psychology 1, which is in the arts department, and I was suddenly hooked on medicine. And so the next year I gave up the arts and I did the first year medicine at Pietermaritzburg University.
Okay.
And then I had to move to a medical school in my second year in Witwatersrand, Joburg.
I have to ask a question. How do you end up, after 6 years of medical school, how do you find yourself in Botswana, in the Okavango Delta, by yourself, presumably with very little experience outside of cities?
None. Absolutely none. I was trying to get away from a city, and I had an entree to Botswana. I knew people up there, and in '72 I came up here, and hunting was on the go, and spent 2 weeks, and I suppose that was the turning point. Anyway, many years later, after some more training in London, postgraduate, I went back to Joburg, and I suppose it was politics, really. It was the Soweto riots that finally galvanized me into get out of this situation and go and find somewhere else to live. My Afrikaans was zero. I never learned the language, and so I chose Botswana. Anyway, I came up on holiday and I told my professor I'm going to take a sabbatical.
Oh.
And after 3 months I decided, no, this is... I was an anaesthetist prior to that, and so I had to go back and get a refresher course. It was optional from my part, and eventually started practicing in '81.
Okay.
And again, it's full-time hunting, and for many years after that.
Yeah.
And there my experiences start. Never met a hunter in my life before. It was a new thing to me.
Mm.
And I eventually had quite a lot of experience with hunters, because with the training of an anaesthetist, hunters have accidents.
Sure.
And I was flown out emergency. I was the only doctor in private practice in Maun. And I was flown out to buffalo mauls, elephant mauls, lion mauls, leopard mauls, and put up drips when necessary, get them out. The one situation which was quite interesting was an elephant maul, and there was a bit of space. It was nowhere near an airstrip, and the pilot, it was just me, the pilot and I. We landed, and he did whatever for a very short strip, but to take off they had to clear the bush to extend it, because now we're going to take the casualty back and sort it out. And so while I was busy resuscitating the patient, a hunter, they extended the runway, and we took off, just scraping through the trees, and all turned out well. One of the experiences I had was when I'm still a city boy. I've been in Botswana for 3 months, which I drove into the bush, and I spent 3 months by myself. And It was just at Third Bridge. The park had been closed, and I was at Third Bridge, and I spent 3 months there by myself as an experience, and it was. And I was overconfident to begin with, and there's not a hell of a lot you can do in the bush. I started worry about an injury. I started my imagination going crazy, and so I was becoming more and more confined to my little campsite at Third Bridge, where I had a river and I could bathe, and I was reading a book on trees and sitting out there quite safe. So I was all on my own, and no one knew where I was, and it started to prey on me, particularly when I had an experience. I was out with James, my guide, who had a Martini Henry, which never worked, well, not recently, and we went out going for a walk around the camp, and we walk into some young female lions. So I'm looking for guidance from James, who drops his Martini Henry and runs. and I'm not knowing any better, but and so I turned around and I was walking briskly back, and these lions, of course, were following. I mean, that's the worst thing you can do. So that was a lesson learned. When we got back to camp, it was okay. As I said, it just opened. We had to machete our way clearing just to find where the track went,
yeah, okay.
Which was, anyway, it was, I knew from people that I was staying with in previous years, it was a good place to go.
Yeah.
A lot of wildlife, to say the least. And one morning, it was I was driving an F-250, which is a big American vehicle, and it had been bought a second-hand. It had a metal covering over it, and I could actually lock myself in the back of it. And I had 2 44-gallon drums, one with water and one with petrol, just to keep me going, and a bed inside it. It was big, and there was a silence. It was an unusual silence in the bush, and I looked out my window, and there was a leopard pissing on my wheel, my rear wheel. Which, okay, all right, now this is getting a bit too tight. Anyway, I spent 3 months there, came back into town.
Okay.
And that was an interesting experience. I did it again, but this time I took a chef and a mechanic.
Glamping.
Yeah, which was another ball game.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's when we brewed marula, and we ran out of booze up there.
Is there anything that keeps you up at night?
No, I'm relaxed. I'd like to sleep, go to bed early and sleep well, and it's one thing I can do to improve my health.
Okay,
my well-being. And nothing really kept me awake.
Okay.
When I was practicing, it used to be medical matters, but that's gone.
Yeah. Okay, and not that I'm trying to dig out anything to dampen the mood, but is there anything that you might have done differently?
That's a difficult one. No, the conditions that I was in, I would have liked to have pursued medicine in the specialty that I was in. But the other factors were you have to live in a city, you're employed by surgeons. You have to live in a city for that, and I wasn't prepared to do that.
No.
And so I had to forego that.
Well, with the picture you painted, that's perfectly understandable.
You know, there are always there's always that wish list. You know.
It's been an absolutely fascinating journey, listening to your stories. Maybe to end on a question I think I will always ask whomever I'm having a conversation at the Belfort. The question would be, if there's something that you would like to be remembered for, what would that thing be?
Oh, it's something I haven't accomplished. That was on my wish list. Not specifically, no. I'm just an average guy.
Doug, thank you ever so much.
Oh, that's...
Cheers for coming to the Frog and sharing.
Oh, always love it, yeah.
Appreciate it, mate.